Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we discuss the events in the world of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack in the last week. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
It's good to be back, Chris. I'm sorry we had a little glitch last week.
Oh, totally. Me too. First time in 10 years. And I apologize to the audience as well if you didn't see the show last week because there wasn't one and it was a technical glitch and it should be fixed now. So here we go. This last week, first off, there was a story that is just getting more and more interesting because it's getting more and more convoluted. And this is Priscilla Presley's lawsuits. And now Marty Singer, Danny Masterson's old attorney, is involved in this. What's the story here?
Yeah, Priscilla's been getting some good press about her lawsuit in some major publications. And I thought I would just take some time to explain to readers what's really going on because this is a really interesting situation involving Priscilla Presley and a woman that used to work for her named Bridget Cruz in Florida. Bridget's a former auctioneer and had helped Priscilla auction off some Elvis Presley memorabilia. And a couple of years ago, as Bridget describes in her lawsuit against Priscilla, Priscilla was in really bad shape financially and needed help and turned to Bridget. Bridget and some other people put together some companies named after Priscilla in order to help her exploit her fame a little better. And for a year and a half or so, they were working together under these new companies when that film by Sofia Coppola was about to come out about Priscilla. Suddenly, Priscilla shut out Bridget Cruz and the others, and basically breached her contract. That's the allegation that Bridget Cruz is making in her lawsuit that she filed in Orlando in late 2023. Once that became public, I wrote about it at the Daily Beast earlier this year. Priscilla retaliated in an interesting way. She hired Marty Singer, who a lot of celebrities turn to. But it's interesting to me that it was also Danny Masterson who was using Marty Singer to go after his victims. I wanted to remind people of that in 2004, it was Marty Singer that helped Danny Masterson basically force Jane Doe 1 into signing an agreement to shut her up forever. That was their goal. And it was really interesting. It became a very interesting part of the law of the criminal prosecution. At one point, Marty Singer was even subpoenaed and came very close to testifying in that first trial.
That's right.
And then that was in 2004. And then years later, when more of these other victims, these other Jane Does, realized that they were not alone, that Danny Masterson had victimized multiple women. One of them, Jane Doe 3, and her husband put some stuff out on Twitter about Danny. At that point, Danny had Marty Singer write this nasty, scary letter, which I published a few years ago at the Bunker, trying to scare them. So Danny Masterson, Scientology celebrity, turned to Marty Singer to basically bully and silence these women. Now, Priscilla Presley has turned to Marty Singer to retaliate against this auctioneer. And they filed an elder abuse lawsuit in Los Angeles, I believe in July. And it's getting a lot of publicity. And everything that she does in that lawsuit gets a lot more publicity than what Bridget Cruz is doing in Florida in her lawsuit. Okay. And so, they're alleging that Priscilla was taken advantage of by these people. And I wanted to point out some interesting things in that lawsuit. There's a lawyer that they're suing who came back with a declaration, said, no, I've got all my receipts here to show that you're not telling the truth about me. I thought that was really interesting. I think that might be a problem for Priscilla. And I just wanted to explain that part of the reason I'm very interested in all this is that when Lisa Marie Presley and I had our conversations back in 2015, she told me she had definitely left Scientology forever. And she had brought out her mother, Priscilla, and her daughter, Riley, with her at that time. In 2015, she assured me all three of them were out. Since then, I've seen evidence that suggests Priscilla has gone back in. In particular, I put a picture on that post this week when Priscilla did some video interviews with Sofia Coppola about the movie. You can clearly see she's wearing a Scientology cross pendant. I mean, Chris, we had some other evidence as well, but that's kind of shocking that she would do that. But anyway, so I think Priscilla Presley's back in Scientology, and she's turned to Marty Singer, the same person Danny Masterson did, to go after this person. So I wanted to bring people up to date because all they're seeing in the press is that Priscilla put in a declaration, making it sound like she's this been victimized by these people, like that lawyer I was talking about, and anything Priscilla says is getting a lot of coverage in mainstream media, and I just wanted the people to see that there's a larger picture about what's going on here. So that's what I was trying to do.
Excellent. And there's a lot of moving parts now. And to just clarify one thing, at least from my opinion of where the church is coming from, let's be clear, Marty Singer was not Danny Masterson's attorney when he was convicted. And it's an earlier thing in that case. And so the church is not looking at Marty Singer as responsible for Danny Masterson being in jail or something like that. And their Scientologists could still use him. And he's blusterous and noisy and kind of one of those, what you might call a PR attorney, a celebrity attorney, like he's going to make a lot of noise. And
yeah, he's an entertainment lawyer. He's an entertainment lawyer. And yeah, I want to make that clear. He's not just representing Scientologists. He's representing a lot of famous, celebrities. I actually first encountered him years ago when I was the editor-in-chief of the Village Voice, and he sent us a very angry, scary letter because of something Michael Musto said in a column. And it wasn't even something Michael Musto said, but this was, Jeremy Piven was on Broadway and had to quit the show. And it was kind of a mystery. And he claimed that it was mercury poison that he got from eating too much sushi. And it was a David Mamet play. And so this was Michael Musto quoted David Mamet saying, "I hope Jeremy does well in his new career as a thermometer." And it was just Michael Musto quoting David Mamet, making a cute little joke. And we got this fire-breathing letter from Marty Singer. He sent to me as the editor, "You need to take that down and you got to apologize." And we're like, get out of here.
Oh,
Marty.
wow.
So that's just what he does. And so that would have been, I don't know, 2004 or 5 or something. That was a long time, 20 years ago.
Right.
That's what he does. And that's why celebrities like him, is that he will be angry on their behalf and yell at other people.
Right.
So I don't want to say that Priscilla's hired him simply because she's a Scientologist. I just think it's an interesting parallel that Priscilla Presley has turned to the same person Danny Masterson did at this time, and to look past what Marty's trying to do for Priscilla and look at the larger picture.
Exactly. Because it's strategery, as they say, right? It's like, oh, here's a noisy lawsuit. Let's make more noise to drown that out. Is just one level of dealing with that stuff, and it's a strategy Scientology has used before, by the way. So it's not even out of the blue. Now, another lawsuit that is kind of making its way is this Whitney Mills wrongful death lawsuit. And this is pretty serious stuff. And Dr. David Minkoff is involved in this as a key player. We had a response from him this week. What's the latest?
Yes, Chris, we've been looking forward to this. Whitney Mills was this OT8 Scientologist. She was 40 years old. She ended her life in a really tragic way. She'd been suffering very severe mental anguish. Her fellow Scientologists, according to her mother, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit saying that, look, these Scientologists were telling her to end cycle, that if there's, the last thing they wanted her to do was to get some actual proper psychiatric mental health care. And so they told her instead, end cycle, just end your life and you can, you're a Thetan, you can just jump into a new body, whatever. And she was also being treated by Dr. David Minkoff. And we have texts from him that are just incredible, where she's reached out to him. She's in total anguish. She needs help. And he's telling her, just rely on TR0, Eye of the Tiger. You've got LRH on your side. Just incredible. And So Layla Mills, Whitney's mother, filed this wrongful death lawsuit earlier this year, and we've just been waiting for her. We had to wait for a while for her to add David Minkoff. There's this thing in Florida where you have to give a doctor like 90 days to do kind of pre-discovery thing before you actually sue him. And so they went through that, and now she has sued the doctor. And one of the things that her attorney, Ramon Rasco, did was he lined up 3 medical experts to review the records of what Minkoff had done in this case. An infectious disease specialist, a neurologist, and a psychiatrist. And you remember, I published some or most of what they actually wrote in their reports, and it's devastating. These doctors reviewing and just saying that Minkoff failed at every turn. He diagnosed her with things she didn't have, told her she had parasites and chronic Lyme and ovarian cancer, none of which she had, never referred her to actual real mental health care, just horrible. And they all just said that there's no question that he contributed to her suicide. Well, this week, so we've been wondering, what's he going to say in return? I mean, they've got him, they've got the texts. I mean, what can he possibly say? So this week, his attorney, Kyle Fontaine, filed 2 motions to dismiss. One based on that pre-discovery period before he was actually named to the lawsuit, and then one dismissed based on the motion dismissed based on the lawsuit itself. And basically, what they're saying is that, according to Florida law, when you hire an expert to come in and review what a doctor has done, it has to be a doctor in the same specialty. And Dr. Minkoff's specialty is alternative medicine, complementary medicine. He's renowned for it, as attorney said. And so you've got an infectious disease specialist, a neurologist, and a psychiatrist. None of those are alternative medicine doctors. So basically what my language is that, oh, yeah, you didn't hire another quack to review what this quack did. So I don't know how the judge is going to see that, because on the one hand, if Florida law says it has to be the same specialty, would he actually go there? Because David Minkoff's specialty is hokum. I mean, it's quackery.
Yeah.
And I guess by that scale, he was doing fine. But by any scale of actual medical care and trying to save this woman from terrible situation, I don't know how that's going to go down. But I'm just reporting that's Minkoff's comeback. I mean, they also had numerous other things that were very standard. I've seen a lot of motions to dismiss, and this one was particularly weak to me, which suggested to me they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot to hang their hats on. So this is the best they can do, is say, the 3 doctors you hired just don't apply, dismiss them from the lawsuit. I don't know how that'll fly with the Florida attorney. Now we get to look forward to a reply from Ramon Rasco and Mrs. Mills. So that'll be interesting.
Well, I certainly hope its tone is one of outrage, because that would be appropriate in this case. I mean, there are so many silly things I could say here. All I'm going to say, I guess, is, what they call alternative medicine that works? Yeah, they call it medicine. This alternative medicine is just so much crap. And Minkoff has, as you said, been peddling it for years and making a fortune doing so. It's, just because people like something or reach for something or want something doesn't make it true or real or helpful. And if there's anybody who, it'd be our audience when it comes to Scientology that would know that, right? So Minkoff is the worst of all worlds when it comes to this, and I really hope he gets resoundingly slapped down with the logic of that argument. I really do. Okay, now there was a really interesting kind of juxtaposition of 2 days stories where you featured this sort of geriatric club of Scientology, but then correctly then show the next day a story of how they are trying so desperately to be hip and young. What were the details of all of this?
So it's been a while since we've seen one of these very long flyers. When they have these Ideal Org fundraising events, they will put together a flyer that they put in an email and send out to people, and somebody's, very nicely sends me a copy. And they're just these endless long flyers. I have to chop them up because it'll go crazy if you try to post them on something. And
Go and
but
go and go.
it's go and go and go, and they're trying to give you a sense of this fun fundraiser, and people are often in costumes, and there's something themed about the local city and stuff. So this one was St. Louis. It was less sort of nutty than some of the other ones we've seen, like in Boston. At Boston recently, there was a guy dressed up in a lobster costume, if you remember.
Right.
And yeah, and so they get pretty crazy. But the St. Louis one didn't have too much of that kind of craziness, but the money amounts were just amazing. I mean, people that have they it's all in coded language, right? If you give $100,000 to the ideal org. And so what's going on is since 2003, David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, has been trying to replace his regular orgs, which is Scientology's word organizations for churches, and replace them with more larger, fancier, high-tech cathedrals that he calls ideal orgs. And one after another, these cities have spent 20, $30 million doing that. And St. Louis has been on that list forever. I know they've already gone through a couple different buildings they've tried to buy. It's just St. Louis, for some reason, has struggled. Kansas City's had theirs for 5 years, but St. Louis has struggled. And so they're just trying to get people to send in money. And then if you donate $100,000 to an ideal org project, you are told, they give you a certificate that you are now a humanitarian.
Right.
If you give 200,000, you've 2x humanitarian, 3x humanitarian. Well, there were a couple people there that were 39x and 41x humanitarians. That means those two people have given 3.9 and 4.1 million dollars just for this one project in this one town that I think back in the 70s there was probably a fairly healthy Scientology mission community, whatever. Today
Yep.
there's not very many people there, and it's just incredible what these people are pressured. And then in the flyer itself, at that night, these people had like upped it once. So the person that was 39 got to 40. The person that was 41 got to 42. That means that night at that event, at that hotel ballroom or whatever, they gave $100,000 on the spot. So it's just incredible to see. And they're all like white folks in their 60s, right? I mean,
Yes.
which it's a small number of folks that still have this, still holding on to this vision of L. Ron Hubbard in the 70s and stuff or whatever. And they still, I guess, they still think that this is going to usher in a new civilization or something. It's just kind of incredible.
It really is mind blowing to watch it happen over and over and over again, year after year after year. And I was thinking earlier with these incredibly long. I mean, you just got to see that for yourself. But it's practically like a little template that they've probably made now, where they just plug in the pictures and stuff. It's so rote and such a machine that they are running, that they have built over the last 2 decades, this ideal org machine, and it just runs now kind of on its own inertia, really. And so these old folks who make up the majority of Scientology public are just giving and giving and giving, and then they make more interest, and then they give and give and give some more, whatever, however they work out how they do it. And we've seen also, of course, Scientology go to the lowest levels of credit card fraud and deception and elder abuse to harangue people for this money. So none of that's changed. And all those things we reported on.
So then on the one side, that's who's giving them the money. Then the other side is who's going to work there. And so one of my readers passed along a flyer that got sent out by the Pasadena org showing this hip young group of 5 or 6 staffers in their staff outfits. And it's clearly in the atrium of the flag building. So what's going on is right now, the sort of flavor of the month right now is that David Miscavige is making all these claims for this admin tech, the golden age of admin. And in order for that, because he's got to come up with an excuse. Like I said, he's been creating these ideal orgs since 2003. And his claim is that if you can just raise all that money and replace your local org with this ideal org, it's going to create this rush of interest. We're going to have all this expansion. Well, they spend all this money, they get these new buildings, and they just sit empty. Something's not working. And so he's come up with a number of excuses over the years. The most recent is that there's errors in delivery, and we need to get these staffs to go to Flag and get trained on the golden age of admin. And it would be like, I don't even know how to explain it in the real world. It would be like, your McDonald's is not doing good, so you send the staff to some corporate office, and if they learn to sell French fries a little better, send them back. Now they're going to do better. It's like, well, okay. And so they go to Florida and they go get training for months and months and months, and then they come back, and that's supposed to solve everything. But I thought it was cute that they had good-looking young people in these slick outfits, which reminds me of what the London org did a few years ago. They had kind of a James Bond kind of a look. And I remember thinking to myself, why doesn't, London's a little hipper. There's no question. We've talked to Alex Barnes Ross about this, that the staff there were a little bit cooler about social media and about the look, and at least making it look like London had something going on. And I've always wondered why the rest of Scientology doesn't try that. Well, here's an example. Maybe they are. Here's an example that they're trying to use the idea that, hey, why don't you come work with these cool, hip young people, who are probably all the children of Scientologists, right?
That's exactly right.
That's where most of this staff is coming from today. It's such a small thing now, Scientology, and it's very insular and very generational, I think.
Absolutely, it is. And this is the sort of second or third generation of staff. Because the 70s, I mean, just in terms of, just real quick, guys, the 70s was the boom period. That's when Scientology was really flooded with people. And who were they? Demographically, mostly a lot of university students and middle-aged or younger professionals. And they flooded into those Scientology churches in the 70s, and they did the communications course and all of that. Those people are those geriatric people we're laughing at now, given all the money, while their kids and grandkids are the ones staffing the orgs. So it really is this sort of eating its own kind of revolving door thing. And that is a big part of the shrinkage of Scientology, because while they had that boom period in the 70s and 80s, say what you will about Hubbard and his ability to somehow graft Scientology to the cultural buttons of the time, Miscavige can't. He just doesn't know how to do it. And his lame efforts to continue to try are reflected in our next story, the IAS Gala release photos and new stuff. What was this about?
So the IAS Gala was back on the weekend of October 25th to 27th. And we got a lot of reports at the time of what was going on outside, because Alex Barnes Ross was out there with his protest each day. Got some great reports from him, videos from him about what it was like seeing Scientologists going in there. And then we got a little bit of social media glimpse of inside. I saw some photos of people posted from inside the tent. And of course, the most important was a photo of Tom Cruise from the Saturday night Patrons Ball. That made its way to social media. So we know that he was there as well. But, the next thing is we always look for this press release and slideshow. And I was waiting and waiting. Alex had to remind me that last year it took, a few weeks. I'd forgotten how long it takes. Finally, it showed up yesterday, and so I, went through it, and a couple conclusions. I mean, first of all, I immediately looked to see what the celebrity showing is. Tom Cruise was not in the slideshow. He's not mentioned in the press release. We do know he was there because that photo showed up on social media. The only people I saw in the front row were Jenna and Bodie Elfman, Trish Duggan, and Nancy Cartwright, and that's it. Really anemic celebrity showing at this event. Yeah. Wow. And then, but like I said, we know Tom Cruise was that was a Friday night. On Saturday night, we know Tom Cruise was there but I didn't see anybody else. See, that was the unfortunate thing about the Saturday night thing, was all the views of the crowd were from the back. There were no good views of who was in the front tables. There might have been some other celebrities there that we didn't see, but that's all that I've seen. And then Nancy Cartwright was also, Jenna Elfman was the MC for the Sunday night is a charity concert. Jenna Elfman was the MC last year. Nancy Cartwright was the MC this year. As far as the other photos, when I was looking at an overall shot of the tent on Friday night, the big night, that's the big attendance. That's when David gives his 3-hour speech. I was kind of shocked that they're like in the first 3 or 4 or 5 rows in front of the camera, there were a lot of empty seats. You do not normally see that in a
Hmm.
Scientology, in a picture that Scientology puts out, right? So
Yeah.
that was interesting. And we had wondered if it would be a smaller crowd this year because they waited to the very last minute to say what date it was. I think they were trying to throw off Alex. I think they were trying to, confuse people. But they paid a price for that. I think they had lower attendance, so it wasn't greatly attended. I mean, they still filled the tent. I mean, they still have a couple thousand people there, but nothing like the 7,000 that they used to claim, right?
Right.
Um, and Dave's it was the 40th anniversary of the IAS. I wondered if he might do something special. Basically, he kind of hit the high points on the last 40 years. So he bragged about the Portland Crusade in '85. He bragged about a Toronto court decision in '91. He talked about the places of worship ruling by the England Supreme Court, which was 2013. He talked about, just sort of like these highlights of where they've sort of won. And then of course the big one, of course, the IRS in 1993 in the United States. Other than that, it was pretty standard. Just like he's talking about CCHR and about Way to Happiness, and then it comes to Freedom Medals. That Friday night, the big thing is who are the 3 Freedom Medal winners this year? One was an Italian guy that pushes Narcanon. One was an Italian guy who pushes. Oh, I'm forgetting now. I know the third award went to a couple in Hungary for pushing Way to Happiness. I
Was it a
forget what the second.
CCHR thing?
The first guy was Narcan. It's right. First guy was Narcanon in Italy. Second was CCHR in Italy.
Yeah.
Third was Way to Happiness in Hungary.
There we go.
Okay, whatever. Right, and
Yeah.
then that. So I
Making
would
inroads
say.
into society, Tony. Come on.
So overall, it's sort of a. I don't know. It didn't seem like it was as big a deal as last year. The big surprise this year was that he revealed 3 new TV ads. Two of which are very much like Super Bowl ads of the past. So I would assume one of them becomes a Super Bowl ad. The third one was a little different. It was kind of cheeky, and it's an actress. I'm going to point that out. I think in today's post, but she's a known actress, and I didn't realize she's a Scientologist, saying, yeah, when people find out, they're surprised. People find out what, right? And then they go through all these other people saying kind of the same thing, like, yeah, it always gets people's attention. They're so surprised when I tell them. And then they say to the very end, what they're talking about is, yes, I'm a Scientologist, right? So it's a little clever, it's a little cheeky. It sort of is addressing the fact that they know they're controversial. I give them points for that. I think it's a clever ad. But again, the problem with all these ads is, Chris, they never tell you a damn thing about what Scientology actually is,
Exactly.
because they can't talk about it. They can't say, well, it's this past life therapy where if you can figure out who you were 76 trillion years ago, you become like a god. I mean, they just can't say that. So they have to just say, oh, we're going to unleash your potential. So those 3
Exactly.
ads I thought were really interesting, and yeah, and I one of them will probably become the Super Bowl ad, so it's fun to see it early.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how they roll forward with this, but I will continue to assert that either Miscavige either is not really that interested in bringing in new members or is just so bad at it that he just doesn't know how to do it. I really can't tell at this point which one it is because I can't read his mind. But the good news is that this stuff is really not very effective at bringing in new people. So try as they might, the toxicity of Scientology is well understood out there, and we're just going to keep letting y'all know about that.
Lots of new pictures of Dave. People always, whenever I post these pictures, there's always this lot of discussion about how bad he looks. Oh, has he got something? He's coming down with a disease. The guy is 64 years old, and I'm sorry, I think he looks fine. I think he looks very healthy for a 64-year-old person.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got this wild pompadour, which can't be real. But other than that, and the other thing that's key is, yes, if you're wondering, yes, he was wearing his wedding ring, which is always really interesting that he's wearing his wedding ring when Shelley hasn't been seen in 19 years now. So,
Wow.
yeah, fun pictures. Come to the bunker, take a look at them.
Absolutely. All right. And then very last, and certainly not very least, there was a story this week about Mike Rinder and a series of videos that he posted, and just get your thoughts first on this one.
Yeah, I've been communicating with Mike. He's been very helpful with questions I have for stories. I know he's been going through a tough time, and I really appreciate that he's still responding to, stupid questions I have about Scientology. And he had let me know that he had a wonderful year on a drug that really had kept his cancer in check. But I guess the nature of these things is at some point it becomes less effective. The drug just doesn't work the way it was before. And so that had caused him to have to go through some a new rounds of chemo, and then some spots of cancer showed up in his brain. And that you can't do chemo for the brain. You've got to do radiation. So I knew he'd been going through radiation. At that point I was sending him messages, and I knew it was a little tougher, and he was letting me know that it's really difficult for him. I really felt for him. And then he said, "Listen, I'm going to put up some videos about some things I want to say." I said, "Okay." Um, and I didn't know what was going to be in them. I just thought to myself though, yeah, but he's been through radiation. He's not going to look the same. And I wondered what it might, what the effect might be. And sure enough, he put the videos up, and I don't know. I think considering all the stuff he's been through, he looks good. He's a fighter. He's doing fine. But I know for people that haven't seen him in quite a while and don't know what he's through, it's a shock. Okay, he's obviously lost his hair. He's weaker. He's coughing. He's having a hard time. He broke them up into small videos so he could just do a small amount at a time. It's heartbreaking. I mean, this is a guy that I think we all admire, who's done so much. He's been subject to so much fair game from David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology, and he fought through it. He did the incredible series with Leah. He wrote this fantastic book. And he's been such an inspiration for people that want to see David Miscavige investigated and brought to justice. And we know that he and Leah have worked very hard behind the scenes to try to get something going with the government, to try to get the federal government to make some, get some investigations going. We don't want to lose a person like that. Look, the rest of us do our best. And I know, Chris, you do your best, and I do my best to expose things. But somebody like Leah Remini, somebody like Mike Rinder, they're more effective than we are at certain things, and we just hate to lose somebody like that. So I'm still rooting for him. I thought for me the toughest thing on those 7 videos was watching him talk about Leah, and he broke down. And I know how much that relationship has meant to them both. Every time I've heard it from him or Christy Colbrand, they've described this medical team they put together. So I'm not giving up on Mike. I think that he's got a great medical team. I think they're doing what they can, and I'm looking forward to him to getting healthy again. But definitely, it was a shock for a lot of people to see him like that. I saw he got a huge outpouring of support and love from people. I asked him about that. I said, "Have you seen what you're getting?" And he said absolutely. He mentioned the video that you made and said how much that meant to him. So I think it's just really been great for people to get a chance to let him know how they feel. And I will just say that he sees it, and I'm really glad that he had that opportunity.
Huge. He and Leah have been the best at this, and I just don't have any qualms in saying that. It's not a matter of trying to say other people haven't done things. I've been doing this for 10 straight years. You've been doing this for twice as long. We're good at our jobs. We do well, but they took it to a whole nother level, and that just has to be acknowledged for what it is. And when I say I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, who do you think I'm talking about? Mike is just awesome, and I did post a video laying out all my thoughts about that, so we're not going to do that again here. But I did want to say that that's the part that we acknowledge and we talk about on this show. We don't get into any of that other stuff because there's no reason to. This is about fighting Scientology. And that's what Mike is all about. That's what Lee is all about. And that's what we're about. And the rest of it is just noise and nonsense. So if you've ever wondered in watching, this over these years, why we never go there, that's why. There's no reason to. Okay, so that being said, Mike, I wish you nothing but the very best moving forward. And if you can get your health back, I am 100% there and in support of that. I have definitely let Mike know very directly and personally my thoughts about all of that. Okay, folks. So we've reached the end of our show for this week. Tony, any sort of previews of what we might have coming up this week?
This is an interesting week because Priscilla Presley has a deadline to respond to Bridget Cruz's new lawsuit, new amended version of her lawsuit this week. And it's in that amended complaint where Bridget's trying to establish that, yes, Priscilla does have ties to Florida and can be sued there. She said the tie to Florida she has is that she has a previously unidentified grandkid of her and Elvis who's living in Florida today. So pretty big bombshell allegation in the lawsuit, and Priscilla has until this week, unless she gets another extension, to answer that. So that'll be interesting to see if she says something about that. And then also this week, we're supposed to get to see the first appeal brief from the Danny Masterson legal team. So we'll get a chance to see what it is they're arguing about what happened in the criminal trial that should convince an appeals court that the trial judge, Judge Olmedo, made some mistakes or something, and that Danny deserves a new trial. So it'll be interesting to see what their argument for that is. And that's been, he's been in custody now for a year and a half, and he's been in state prison since a little more than a year. So it'll be interesting to see how they argue about that. That's so big week coming.
Excellent. Well, we look forward. All right, folks. So you can see right there on the screen in front of you, Tony's Substack address. Go to it, get subscribed, get your daily notifications, and then come here on Mondays for the weekly wrap up. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.